Hello, everyone. My name is Farrah Simpson. I am the NSBP student representative to the executive board, and I attend Brown University. Today, I will be talking to you about disruptors of barriers, inspiring the new generation. So I'm from Jamaica. Anyone who knows me knows that. And my father was actually the first in his family to go to college. And he didn't just go to college, but he actually migrated from Jamaica to attend University of Wisconsin, which was pretty much unheard of at that time. So of course, there was no roadmap or blueprint for my father to follow, but he was motivated because he truly believed that education is key. That education is a pathway to success, which in his eyes meant being able to provide a better life for your family. And so as I've gotten older, I've really started to question, well, what are the effects of inequitable access to education? And does it affect people's abilities to reach their goals? And so growing up, my father always stressed the importance of education in my life. And he truly encouraged me and told me I could do anything I wanted and I should dream big. And all I had to do was work hard, especially at school. And so I was curious about the world around me and how it worked. And so naturally, I really loved science and physics. And I found physics particularly challenging. And I really wanted to do well in the Caribbean secondary examination. If you're from the Caribbean, you know how important these exams are. And this is basically the equivalent of final examinations in high school. And so I practiced and practiced. And when I placed first in physics in Jamaica, I was ecstatic. I was like, okay, I can work hard and achieve any goal I want. And I truly believe that. But is this always the case? I remember the first time I felt so discouraged and like, no matter how hard I worked, I would never be able to achieve this goal I had, which was to do physics. And I wasn't completely set on doing physics in undergrad. But so when I was applying to universities, I applied to universities for different majors. So I applied to some engineering, some pre-law, but I applied to one for physics, and that was MIT. And when I got the call from an MIT interviewer that I was on the short list to being accepted, and they were requesting an in-person interview all the way in Kingston, I drove there and I was so excited. I told the MIT interviewer why I was perfect for MIT and why MIT was perfect for me. And his response to me was that he didn't think I would be a good fit. And I think that was the first barrier I ever experienced in physics, because someone was basically telling me I wouldn't fit into a place where I wanted to be. And, I'm sure I've subconsciously thought, what does it mean to be a scientist? What does it mean to do physics? Who gets to do physics? All these questions because of media or who I saw winning Nobel Prizes or on TV as scientists. But that was the first time that I thought, do I get to do physics? Do I get to be a scientist? Do I fit in with what it means to do these things? And so, of course, I was rejected from MIT. But I ended up going to Columbia for engineering pre-law. And in my first year, my professor of physics was actually a high energy experimentalist at CERN. And he would go on tangents about particle physics and the LHC, Large Hadron Collider, and high energy experiment. And I was so fascinated. This was a whole new physics research area I had never been exposed to. As you can imagine, in Jamaica, there aren't a wide range of physics research areas. We mostly focus on climate change. And so this was a whole new world for me. And I think about it often that had I not migrated and gone to Columbia, been in that class, I probably wouldn't have heard about high energy experiment. But I went to his office hours to find out more about what he does and tell him this is something I was interested in. And that's when he told me more about physics graduate school and the path I would have to take to do what he does, which was be a professor of physics and a high energy experimentalist at CERN. And so I thought about going to physics grad school as a possible path for me at this moment. And by my junior year, I quickly learned that my passion for physics was not dead because all my classes became physics classes. I dropped the pre-law altogether and I ended up majoring in applied physics. So of course, at this point, I wanted to perform really well in all my advanced physics classes. And in my junior year, I remember getting a B in an advanced physics class, quantum, and I went to the professor completely distraught. I was like, the door had closed on physics graduate school. It was no longer a possibility for me. And as we all know, that's completely ridiculous. But I went to him to seek advice and see if there was anything that I could do to bring up my grade to an A by the end of the year, or if physics grad school would still be a possibility. And he didn't respond telling me, a lot of people in physics graduate school have B's and C's. Instead, he said that, well, physics isn't for everyone and physics graduate school isn't for everyone. And so, of course, this was another barrier for me because someone was telling me I don't have what it takes to be a physicist and was discouraging me. And this begs the question, well, who gets to do physics? And more importantly, who is often barred from the opportunity to do physics? At this point, I was exploring other career paths, and I did my first internship in engineering because, that was what I went to Columbia to do anyway. And I performed, and I was in the engineering department at Sandals Resort in Jamaica. And here I was in a different space, in a different country, and people would comment and say, you should be behind a desk or greeting guests. And my favorite comment, a pretty girl like you should not be getting your hands dirty. And so it was hard to cope with these constant comments and it felt like an uphill climb every day to show up. And I had to think extra hard about what I said or what I wore or how I came off because people already felt like I didn't fit in where I was. And so it's constantly having to battle with these biases and imposter syndrome, a barrier to people being able to exist within certain fields, for people to be able to take up space within certain fields. I continued exploring different paths, and I was still very interested in doing physics and wanted to focus less on people telling me that I shouldn't fit in and more on that feeling I had the first time I heard about high energy experiment. And so physics professors at Columbia didn't only discourage me, and I wasn't only barred, but they encouraged me to apply to physics graduate school as well and told me that I had tremendous potential. And one specific professor, Professor Simon Billinge, actually told me, well, if you want to go to physics graduate school, you should get research experience, and you can do that in my lab. And as we all know, research experience is actually very important in your physics graduation application. So he really was important in my journey, and he was really a disruptor of barriers for me because he made that uphill climb a little bit easier by telling me this. And so I performed research with him in undergrad in solid state physics to develop my experimental and scientific skills. And I performed an analysis to compare the wood taken from the Mary Rose ship, which was King Henry VIII's flagship during the Tudor period. It sank off the coast of England in the 1500s and was raised from the seabeds in the 1980s. And in order to conserve this important historical artifact, it was important to learn more about the structural properties of the wood and the degradation process. And so what you see here are correlation maps showing fresh oak wood and wood taken from the Mary Rose ship. And the correlation maps actually store pair distribution functions, which tell us structural information about the wood. And so on the right-hand side, you see we have overlaid the X-ray diffraction spectra and the pair distribution functions from the fresh oak wood and the Mary Rose oak wood, so that we could better understand the effects on the wood from being submerged underwater for such a significant period of time. And so I was in a better position to apply to graduate school, but I still wasn't convinced that this was the path for me. There are lots of other barriers and constraints in physics in graduate school in general, because there were financial constraints that I had to consider. And also, if I decided that I wanted to go into a PhD program, I wouldn't be able to go home for a significant period of time if that was something I potentially wanted to do. And so I took a year off to decide what I wanted to really do. And that's when I met Professor Stefan Alexander. And he was the first Black physicist I had ever seen or spoken to. And I told him about my story, and he told me some of his experiences. And I realized that there were a lot of parallels. We had similar experiences. And as I talked to more Black physicists, being a part of NSBP, I realized that this is not my individual story. We have many similar experiences, and I'm sure many of you can think of similar experiences you've had to the ones I've shared here with you today. And so this is not my story, but a shared journey, similar but different journeys. And by hearing about other people's similar experiences, I've really been able to understand my experience more and understand why I felt like I was in a space where I felt like I didn't belong. And that has made me really develop compassion for myself, because it's not just about your abilities or capacities. It's also about all these other stuff, all these other barriers around us. Professor Alexander asked me what I want to do, and I was candid with him, and I'm glad I was, because I told him, I want to do high energy experiment, but I didn't know if it was something I could do, and I had no experience in high energy experiment. And he said, he encouraged me and told me, if this is what you really want to do, like this is what you should do, and you should push for that. And he said he would be there to guide me and mentor me and help to get me where I wanted to be. And of course, that led me to going to Brown. And now I perform research with the CMS collaboration in high energy experiment with the Narain group. And I perform searches for new particles predicted in beyond standard model physics theories. I specifically perform the search for the process of pair production of the X5 third, which is the heavy fermionic partner of a top quark with exotic charge 5/3. And I search for the process in which X5/3 is assumed to decay to a top and a W. As you can assume, the top will then decay to a W and a B, and the Ws can either decay hadronically or to leptons. Now, there are many background processes with the same single lepton final state that I am specifically interested in, including the top EWK and QCD multi-jet backgrounds. And so I select a discriminating variable in order to minimize the contribution from the background. And here the discriminating variable is HT, or the sum of all the jet PTs. And so I also perform a series of cut selections on variables in order to maximize the sensitivity to the signal. And I optimize this cut selection by minimizing the exclusion limit on the cross section of the X5 third. And what you see here is the results from using that optimized final cut selection, and we found the expected limits for a right-handed X5 third. And so I ended up doing what I wanted to do. But I think often about all the close calls. I mean, I had one just last week where I felt like I could not complete my program. But I think about the people along the way who have played an important role, who were disruptors for me, being able to see Black physicists who I could emulate, having people encouraging me and mentoring me. And so I pose the question here to you today: how can you be a disruptor of barriers? Are there ways that you can extend opportunities? Are there ways that you can help to remove some of those financial constraints, to increase representation, to increase access to education? One important way to disrupt barriers, as many of us know, is through service and mentorship. So at Columbia, I did not only explore my passion for physics, but I also explored my passion for teaching, which I've had since a very young age. My grandmother saw me in a college lecture hall for the first time, and she reminisced on how I would teach my stuffed animals math when I was younger all the time. And so at Columbia, I went on several service trips on the There is Hope campaign, which is organized by the Caribbean Students Association of Columbia University. And this campaign is aimed at increasing educational opportunities and knowledge of higher education throughout the Caribbean. And so we travel to different Caribbean islands and we teach workshops on self-love and self-care and identity and college readiness. And it's really these trips that cemented my love for mentorship, because I was able to see the effect that I could have on someone's life by just mentoring, motivating, inspiring, encouraging them. And it's really this passion for teaching and later service and mentorship that has led me to the National Society of Black Physicists. Because NSBP does exactly what we've been talking about. It's a disruptor of barriers for African American and Black scientists. NSBP is about being in a room full of people with similar stories and journeys, a room full of people who encourage and motivate and mentor you, a room full of people who look like you, who you can emulate and see yourself in. And these people pave a path for you to achieve your goals. There are many ways in which NSBP increases educational opportunities, provides networking opportunities, and professional development. One important way in which NSBP has been able to disrupt barriers is through building community with these people with similar journeys and with these mentors who you see yourself in. And of course, it's been a particularly difficult time during this year and this pandemic. And NSBP has been able to build community through programming like the Student Council and the conference and membership meetings. So as you see here, there's a screenshot of us at a game night member meeting. And this is a flyer for one of our movie nights that we had where we watched See You Yesterday together on a Netflix party. And we don't just connect socially, we're also able to elevate each other by sharing our research ideas and engaging in each other's research through the NSBP Innovate Seminar Series. And the NSBP Innovate Seminar Series is a forum hosted by the Cobley Institute for Theoretical Physics, where NSBP members can share their research in a non-specialist way. The talk is live recorded on Zoom and then shared with the NSBP and KITP networks. And so we've had a wide range of speakers, including undergraduates like Samantha O'Sullivan, who is a rising star at Harvard. She gave her talk in Condensed Matter Experiment about characterizing the atomic structural and chemical composition of iron selenide on strontium titanate using transmission electron microscopy and electron energy loss spectroscopy. We've had professors like Dr. Philip Phillips, who is an accomplished professor at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign. And he gave his talk on investigating high temperature superconductivity using a model that exhibits both superconductivity and Mottness. We've had Dr. Charles Brown, who is a postdoc and Ford Fellow at UC Berkeley. He is both an experimental quantum physicist and a science communicator, and is actually one of the founders of Black in Physics that happened last week for the second time, and they had amazing programming. He shared his work on interacting bosons in the flat band of an optical K-GOM lattice. And it's just been so amazing to see these Black scientists engaging in such groundbreaking research and seeing this seminar series grow and able to give our members a platform to share their research. We actually have 11 talks now housed on the KITP and NSBP website, so please feel free to check them out. And of course, this series is not just for NSBP members, but it's also to promote the image of a Black scientist. It's to inspire the next generation of Black scientists. Speaking of inspiring our next generation, the Student Council and NSBP board is especially proud of the family that we built through the mentoring program with the Harlem Gallery of Science. So this program was launched in October of 2020 during the COVID-19 pandemic, and it is aimed at increasing educational resources to schools in Harlem, Upper Manhattan, and the Bronx, which have predominantly underrepresented groups in STEM. And it pairs a mentor who is an NSBP student member or a City College New York student with one high school and one middle school student. Mentors and mentees will meet weekly over Zoom for 30 minutes weekly. And there are 4 mentor leaders as well who oversee the logistics of the program, and they act as a resource to the mentors. And this mentor program has grown into something much more than we could have envisioned. And our mentee Zainab said it beautifully when she said, when I first got into the mentoring program, I thought it was all about math and science, but it turns out it's a lot more than that. It's about teaching social skills, building up a foundation, and also reaching your goals. And so we've been able to provide opportunities for our mentors to grow through mentor trainings, and our students to be able to develop a range of skills and provide them with professional development through our cohort events. Like we had a talk on the science of hip hop and a virtual career day that displayed a wide range of professions. We also introduced STEM kits to encourage scientific exploration. And at the end of the year, we had a graduation ceremony to celebrate the successes of our mentees. And so one of my favorite stories is of Joshua Borrow, now Dr. Joshua Borrow, and Sharif. And here you see them on video building a STEM kit over Zoom together. And Joshua was really inspired by Sharif because of how motivated he was. And of course, Josh inspired Sharif and really guided him along his application process because he was a high school senior at the time. And Sharif is actually going to Penn State now for engineering. And so we've really built something so special, and we actually launched the second year of the program just this week with even more mentors and mentees. And we've really been able to create relationships that transcend the duration of the program. What we want to do here is to create a template, one that we can follow and others can follow to create similar programs throughout the nation and also internationally. And so the Student Council has been able to launch and sustain these amazing programs because of our commitment to serving and our commitment to disrupting barriers by building community, because we have a vested interest. We have seen what it has done for us. And so we met in person for the first time in New York in June at the Student Council retreat. And here you see pictures from that retreat. And it really meant so much to us because all of us could express how, lonely we feel sometimes in the field and how important it was to be able to create these bonds and form this community. And so at the retreat, we shared some of our favorite memories throughout the year. And some of those included the virtual Student Council happy hours, Samantha cooking bananas at one of our virtual cooking events that some of you may have attended, a virtual yoga bonding session we had that was actually taught by Elon, one of our Student Council members' mom, riding across the Brooklyn Bridge together, as you can see, the conference, of course, and the Future of Physics panel, which I'll talk about more in a little bit. And we were actually also able to meet with the executives and other mentor leaders. So Vishan is actually one of the mentor leaders at City College. And one of our mentees actually surprised us. His name is Lee. So we were able to go to City College and meet them all there. And so this retreat was so important for us. we were also able to engage in professional development and team building activities. So just so you know who is a part of the council, here is Samantha O'Sullivan, I've mentioned her before, Latrell Harris, Tracy Edwards, Dewan, Dr. Joshua Burrow, Nicholas Cooper, Emmanuel Aneke. I think I've covered everyone. Okay. And what we want to do is we want to extend this retreat to create the Student Leadership Summit in 2022. And this will be a joint effort with the National Society of Hispanic Physicists, allowing student members to travel on a retreat to engage in professional development workshops and talks to develop skills, to develop grant writing skills and effective leadership skills. And so we really want to do this to provide the opportunities to elevate each other and grow together in the same way that the retreat did for the Student Council. And we've been able to work together and celebrate the successes of the Student Council, but also our individual successes. So Elon, Latrell, Tracy, and Nico were all undergraduates at the time that they joined the Student Council. And now they're all in graduate programs, engaging in exciting research that they're all so happy about and that they love. Emmanuel is a student researcher at Argonne Lab. Samantha conducted research in plasma physics over the summer and won the award for Best Condensed Matter Talk at the conference last year. And of course, as I've mentioned, Dr. Joshua Burrow defended his PhD and is now a postdoc at Brown. And so I see these amazing individuals with such bright futures, and I cannot wait to see what they achieve. But most importantly, I cannot wait to see what we all achieve together. And I say this because this is not just the model of the Student Council. This is the model of all of NSBP. I can think of many examples where NSBP members have supported and elevated each other, achieved together, and paved the path for those who will follow them. Elon Price, who is a Student Council member, she was engaged in research in black hole research with the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory and NSBP in the Event Horizon Telescope Scholars Program, and she ended up writing her graduate thesis with her longtime mentor and NSBP member, Dr. Richard Anantua. And there are many examples of this. And so we're always thinking about how we can continue to support and elevate each other, and also the sustenance of the Student Council and of NSBP. We held a panel called The Future of Physics to discuss just this, the future. And the panel featured a range of scientists in industry and academia, ranging from undergrad to grad to postgrad. And here we talked a lot about our experiences, and we talked about what we thought were best practices for diversity and inclusion in institutions and at scientific organizations. And we weren't just talking about the future of NSBP, right? We were talking about the future of the entire physics community. Because yes, our hope is that NSBP will, of course, continue to increase access to opportunities in physics, continue to increase diversity in physics, create a welcoming, inclusive environment, and inspire and elevate the new generation of Black scientists. But more so, our hope too is that this will not just exist within NSBP networks and spaces, but throughout the physics community. Because the truth is, you do not have to be in a room full of people who look just like you. And I mean, a lot of us don't, right? We hold intersectional identities, but we don't have to be in a room full of people who look like us to be mentored or to be given opportunities, or for people to hear your journey and your story and understand your experience. There's so many ways in which you can disrupt barriers and elevate those around you, those who will follow you, especially those from underrepresented groups in STEM who face unique barriers. I thank you for your time, and I will take any questions that you have.
Thank you, Ms. Farrah Simpson. That was an excellent talk. Thank you for sharing your ongoing journey to obtaining a PhD in physics, in which I know a lot of people here can kind of relate to some of the barriers that you spoke of. You highlighted several of our excellent student and professional members, some of their accomplishments along the way, and some of the programs that you instilled as the student representative. And me being the past student representative, it's been a pleasure working with you throughout this process. With that being said, I'd like to open the floor up for questions. If you have any, then I will read them aloud and then allow Mrs. Simpson to answer. All right, so the first question that we have, how do you apply to be a part of the student council? Do you have to be invited, elected, or do you apply somewhere?
Okay, so the student council is a pretty new development, especially such a large student council. We have been in talks with active members to see if they would potentially want to join the student council. It's really an open process. We don't necessarily have, requirements. It's really who is interested in leadership positions within NSBP. If you are one of those people, I mean, we have become pretty large because there were a significant number of us interested in leadership positions. And so I would just say, reach out to me and the board and express your interest. And hopefully when we turn over, because we will constantly be turning over the student council to invite new student council members to join.
Thank you. All right, so the next question is, so you mentioned your first barrier in physics being that at with an MIT recruiter. Then you provided an additional example while you were at Columbia. Um, what are some examples of more recent barriers that you've experienced probably while you were a grad student at Brown University?
Right. So I use the term barrier very intentionally because a lot of what I talked about doesn't disappear. Just because I'm mentored and supported doesn't mean that I don't face imposter syndrome every day, face, biases from other people and what they expect me to be. I still feel all those things. What support and mentorship and NSBP does is they make it a little easier to do that uphill climb. They make it easier to overcome that hill. And so, of course, at Brown, during my first year, I was actually the only Black graduate student in the physics PhD program. And now there are three of us. And so, of course, that's one of the biggest things, right? Like you feel alone, and I think for a significant period of time too, I felt like somehow I was the representative and had to work extra hard because if I failed, that meant something bigger than another person failing. And I still carry that a lot. I mean, in every space where, people often talk about she's the first, she's going to be the first. And it's not an accomplishment, it's isolating and it's a burden. It feels like it says something if I don't perform well. Yeah.
Okay, I like to follow up with another question. So you mentioned some of the people who served as that broke down barriers for you. Do you also look to them for maybe mentorship or guidance, or when you're going through like sort of these turbulent kind of experiences along the way?
Absolutely. So one of the main reasons I chose Brown University was because, I mean, if I'm being honest, the reason I chose Brown University is because Professor Stefan Alexander and Professor Jim Gates, well, Jim, were there. And I knew that I needed support, mentors, because I knew there would be several times in the program that I would feel I can't do this anymore. And so having them there constantly is the reason I went and why I am still in the program. So I constantly look to them. And now being a part of the board of NSBP, I don't only have them. Now I have an even wider network and a bigger family that I look to. The student council meetings that we have every other week, I literally go into them telling them, you all are the reason I'm here. Like you are the reason I'm still here, because it's really that support. I definitely look to that every single day that I'm in the program, because it also reminds me why I'm here. It's not just about me. I want to be what others have been for me, for other Black scientists, and hopefully many more Black scientists in the future. So.
Great point. Pass the baton. Wonderful. All right, we have another question now. Do you have any advice for seeking out people who will support you along your journey?
Yes, so this was particularly difficult for me, especially at Columbia, because I'm an introvert, and also I was also like migrating and felt pretty isolated. And I would say one thing I wish I had known about were organizations like NSBP, because it immediately puts you in a network of so many people who can support you and mentor you. And what I love the most about NSBP is that everyone is invested in mentorship and paving a path for who will follow them, because they know the importance of it, because they were mentored. So I would say organizations like NSBP for sure is the best way, in my opinion. Muted.
Thank you. We now have another question from Michelle. So she states, paraphrasing an earlier statement, too prissy or too pretty to get your hands dirty. How do you maintain who you are as a woman, as a fashion forward, one at a time, while encountering masculine views on what a woman in physics should actually look like, act, dress, fill in the blank as you like?
Right. So, number one, they don't define what a woman is, right? That's one. And someone wise, Professor Alexander, once told me that my identity, who I am, being a woman, putting on lip gloss every day, wanting to look pretty, all these things, being Black does not diminish it's not contradictory then to my identity as a scientist. It actually supports it, and it makes me an even better scientist, because I bring something unique to the table that no one else can, or very few people can. So be you, literally. Like, you are you, and you are unique, and there's no one else like you. And it sounds corny, but really, there is no one else like you, and you're the only person who can bring what you have to the table.
He says thank you. And I think we have one last question that's coming in. From past president, Dr. Willie Rockford. How do you balance the internal challenges of the imposter syndrome?
So I think everyone has different ways that they do it, and not just one way, right? Like you have to find many facets. One is, of course, mentorship, supportive network. I go to therapy. That has helped me a lot too. I have activities outside of physics. I am not just a physicist or a scientist. I do ballet every week. I love jogging. I maintain my identity outside of physics as well. And I think this has helped me because, it roots me in who I am, and it doesn't make me feel like I am I do still feel often like I'm trying to fit in somewhere I don't belong, to be honest. but it makes me feel less that way. And I think, honestly, just constantly reminding yourself that imposter syndrome is not because of you. It's not because of anything you are able to do. And it's not because of anything to do with your identity or, you know, certain people can't do certain things. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with society and people who have these biases, right? So you are not the problem. The barriers and what's around you are the problem. And you will feel imposter syndrome. That's just a barrier that you unfortunately will feel in a field where the representation is low. And it has nothing to do with your abilities. So I really honestly tell myself that and remind myself of that, and remind myself that I too have the right to be just as confident as everyone else in the field, because there's nothing that they know that I don't know, or they do that I can't do. I have to, you know, battle with things that are unique to certain people and they might not have to battle with, but that doesn't make me any less capable.
Great response. All right, so we have time for one more question. There are two questions in the chat, so I'll pose them both and then let you choose which one you'd like to do. So one question is, how did you get the confidence to do DE&I work? And the second question is, what is your advice for current college students, I guess, that are trying to obtain a PhD in physics?
Undergraduate, college undergraduate, right?
Not specific. Aaron, if you could specify, you know, whether you mean undergrad or grad, or maybe just some general undergrad. There we go.
Right. So to the first question, fake it till you make it. I did it till I could do it without shaking. You know, I came into my own, especially being a part of NSBP and the exec board and being mentored, because I saw qualities in people around me that I wanted to have. And I pushed myself until I was able to be that, because, you know, it's scary and people will always have their opinions, and there are many, you know, things that you'll face along the way. And at the same time, the reward is so much more. Being able to be what other people are, for me, is worth it. So, I mean, as long as you have something motivating and inspiring you to be that, then you will, regardless.
All right, thank you very much. And that will wrap up the Q&A session. Thank you very much, Ms. Farrah Simpson. And next, I will turn over things to Dr. Carol Scarlett so that she can provide some housekeeping issues. And then Dr. Stefan Alexander will close things out for the session.
Well, first, let me just say thank you so much, Farrah, for sharing your story. It is just so wonderful to hear and inspiring as to how, in spite of the many, many barriers, that each time you were able to make the decision that is best for you, and that is to do what you wanted to do and get what you want out of your life and out of your education. I just love hearing that. And I know we've all faced barriers. It's meaningful to the students and to other folks coming behind us to know that they can face those barriers and they can get through them and they can keep going. And so you're truly an inspiration. I want to say that first. A bit of housekeeping. Let me just say thank you to all of our sponsors, all of the people who make this conference possible. We have a great list of sponsors, including our partners like Brookhaven National Laboratory and Associate Universities Incorporated AUI. These are our conference partners who have assisted us with organizing and with getting folks to come out and speak and getting everything set up. And they have been of tremendous help. I also want to say thanks to all of our gold, silver, and bronze level sponsors, companies like Corning Laboratories, NRAO, NASA, Optica, Frib, Morgan State, Notre Dame, just to name a few, that all of them have vested interest in the conference and in making sure this is very successful. And I'm sorry that there are other organizations, I just didn't have time to rattle off the complete list, but thanks to all of our exhibitors as well. And for those students out there and people looking for postdocs or even looking for additional opportunities, please make sure you take advantage of going to the exhibit halls and looking at what folks have to offer. Because these folks come to us and they set up exhibit booths and they're eager to see students, they're eager to do diversity and inclusion work. And we want to make sure that we're connecting with them and we're connecting you with the maximum opportunities. A few other things. Today is the last day for members to vote for new board seats. So please make sure you vote online and please make sure you vote today. Tomorrow, we will have our closing ceremony. And during our closing ceremony, we will also be giving awards for oral and poster presentations. This is always an exciting time because here again, our students have put so much effort into their research and into their work, and we're always glad to see them receive some sort of award. Also tomorrow, there is a business meeting. For those of you who are members and who want to come to the business meeting at 10 a.m., the board will be holding this business meeting, this annual business meeting as part of the conference. Let's see if there's anything else. Next year, if all goes well, knock on wood, because of course we've been sacked for 2 years in a row by COVID, but so has everybody else. But next year, if all goes well, the meeting will be in person. And we're looking forward to meeting at NRAO, who's one of our sponsors and who will become a conference partner. And with that, I will let Dr. Stefan Alexander close out this particular session. Stefan.
Thank you, Carol. And Carol, you know, I'm waiting at NSBP. We're waiting for that Nobel Prize. You know, we know you're going to discover dark matter. We know you're going to do it. Just invite me to Stockholm, please, when it happens. So anyway, this was a wonderful talk. I think this was very, I learned a lot from it. So thank you again, Farrah, for that talk. On that note, I think like one of the things that we should always take time to celebrate, I think one of the most impactful things for me when I was a student was seeing others like me that I can really identify with, like Farrah, who's just a regular everyday, you know, like Farrah is just cool. And but accomplishing at the highest level and that empowering me to say, I can do that too. So I want the students listening out here is that, you know, you can do it, you know, that's what we're about. Like if I can do this, so can you, you know? And so I wanted to share 2 pieces of good news. These are very, very big honors. And the first is on our own student council, Ms. Samantha O'Sullivan, who actually designed the t-shirt and did the video and all that good stuff from Harvard University, was selected as a finalist from Harvard University for the Rhodes Scholarship and the Marshall. The Rhodes Scholarship is a big, big deal. This is like an international thing. And, you know, we'll be signing out the positive energy because as she's in the middle of interviews, but already becoming a finalist for the Rhodes and the Marshall is already a big deal. And we congratulate you. We celebrate you for all that hard work. And this is just an inspiration as to where we are going at NSBP and what our tradition of, as you know, overcoming these barriers since our foundations in the 70s. I think that, you know, this is a telling story from, I think the founders would be proud. So the other thing I want, piece of good news I want to share is our own Farrah Simpson. So Farrah Simpson received an international award from the Large Hadron Collider Physics Center. She won, she was awarded the Graduate Scholars Fellowship, which comes with, I think, $30-something thousand. Only 2 people internationally got this award. And, you know, we claim this victory, and y'all are making us so proud. And any piece of good news, please direct it to the board. we'd love to share that news. Dr. Robertson is always, scanning for the good news. And on that good note, enjoy the rest of the day. Peace.